I look at the breakdown of my own reading habits and histories, I reminisce over the journey I've taken. Reading and books were always encouraged and prioritised as a part of my childhood. In my family, my mother was the sole provider while we were young kids. My dad was a stay-at-home father, and as a single-income family, he was dedicated to providing us with as many opportunities as possible, despite living almost paycheck to paycheck. The local libraries and op shops were our weekly excursions. Beyond simply spending time around books, the act of reading was an experience in and of itself. We would sit together as a family and read, at bedtime, in the car, while cooking dinner, in the garden, and at any point we could find. Reading was about imagination, learning, and connection. This particular attitude is the essential framework for my own philosophy of literature. As a young child, the books I read were about learning new things. Anything that had an interesting title or colourful images. I would read and discuss the book with my family, and we would find ways to integrate the book into our daily lives. A popular book in my childhood was Simply Delicious by Australian author Margaret May. I enjoyed the book because I could remember the catchphrase and join in while Mum and Dad would read it to us. The story followed Mr. Minky as he navigated the bustling, lumpy, bumpy jungle track as he embarked on a journey to deliver a double-dip chocolate chip and cherry ice cream to his son. One weekend, my dad took us for a bike ride through our area, and we ended up with a chocolate chip ice cream at the end, and we read the book together in the park. As children, this was a fun day, and as an adult, as I reflect back on it, the experience, I can see the ways my dad was trying to foster this joy and love for the books we were reading and the stories we enjoyed. This ability to engage with a story beyond reading is one of the cornerstones of my own relationship to texts. Moving further through my history, once we were situated at school, my reading habits shifted. While reading was still a priority in our home, the way I engaged with reading had kind of changed. Now, as a student, my reading was tracked and monitored through book lists and reading charts, gold stars, and reports. The aspect of my younger self that thrived on the validation enjoyed this. However, with school becomes the inevitable chance that as a lower socioeconomic student whose enjoyment came from books, rather than the lack of fancy gadgets or expensive toys, it was a beacon that stood me out from others. As a result, I find it very difficult to think of many enjoyable experiences from primary school. I had the occasional friend, but more often than not this was tied to our mutual love of a book. I loved Harry Potter. And I still do. I received the complete box set of books for Christmas in 2007. I was 9 years old and I'd already read the first 4 books by this point and was obsessed with both the books and the films. I remember relating to all the characters in my own way, but my love for the series was cemented in the ability to fully immerse myself in the world, into the character dynamics, and it sparked my imagination in ways that I had never experienced. The joy of reading came from this ability. The ability to move beyond the words on the page and feel a sense of belonging in the fictional world, a belonging that at school I didn't feel. I would spend my recesses and lunches in a small, unlocked sunroom next to the teacher's lounge reading the books, back to back, continuously. There were times when I remember feeling genuinely sad or sick if I wasn't reading the books. The Wizarding World felt so vast and unexplored, and as a reader you're pulled in, invited to experience the action. Much like my dad would try and bring our childhood books to life, I would do everything I could to animate the books. I would watch the movies, I'd play the soundtracks while pretending I was flying on my own broomstick. I would run around with sticks and pretend they were wands. Sometimes a small group of us at school would play Quidditch along using the 4 square courts and make up our own rules to resemble gameplay. I had a close friend, and I would stay at her house on Fridays and watch the extended version of the films, we would play the board games, and we'd discuss our favourite fan theories and more. This is all to say that this peculiarly large portion of my history with reading is pertinent to how I continue to link the act of reading and engagement with a literature as a multi-dimensional and multi-sensory experience. I wouldn't read a book simply to read it. I would read a book, I'd watch its film adaptation if I could, I'd watch interviews with the authors or actors, I'd find online fan drawings for the book if there was none. I'd grow older and this would move into fan fiction, exploring it as a way to see the text in a different light. I still avidly read fan fiction. It's a way for me to analyse and examine my favourite texts from new angles and experience characters in new ways. This multi-sensory experience ties very closely to my double major in both English and media arts. For me, the two subjects are so closely intertwined. In recent years, I've found a deep enjoyment in autobiographical texts, especially those with corresponding unabridged audiobooks. I see this as a way of immersing myself in the author's story as they intended it to be told. Additionally, I've joined a D&D campaign with my friends, which combines the elements of imagination, connection, and learning that I've always linked closely to reading. Moving past fantasy fiction, I have a love for crime novels, both fiction and non-fiction. Not surprisingly, the book series by author Kathy Reichs is in my top 3 favourites. I discovered her books through the TV show they inspired. Beyond this, her writing incorporates technical subject-specific language and references that have encouraged the blending of reading and learning that as an early child were key to my initial relationship with texts. Now as an adult, I find a particular enjoyment with texts that can provide both elements. As I reflect upon this short, condensed version of my own literary history, I think to the question I get almost daily from my current students on placement. Miss, why do you want to be a teacher? Ali, what made you want to teach English? Miss Baker, what is so good about English? It's boring, I don't like reading. Reading for me has always been about imagination, learning, and connection. My desire to use these experiences and passions for the purpose of working with students who may have not had the same experiences as me, in order to show them that, if nothing else, a little piece of the ability of the subject English and texts to spark imagination, foster deep learning, and develop connections for the students to subject English, literature, school, their friends, their hobbies, and to me as their teacher, and to the characters, worlds, and joys in their texts.